because of that, when I would go out and do, things like drugs and stuff like that, I'd feel a tremendous amount of guilt because I'd think, oh, they're thinking about me right now. They want me to do good. And most people...
He doesn't believe he's in jail because of what he did. He believes he's there because of forces he says are working behind the scenes. According to reports, the son of a famous Hollywood filmmaker thinks his incarceration isn't the result of personal responsibility alone, but of a much larger narrative built around him. What makes this case unusual isn't celebrity. It's how the accused reportedly understands reality itself. And that belief may now shape the entire direction of his legal defense. At the center of this case is not just a courtroom battle, but a psychological one. Nick Reiner, the adult son of actor and director Rob Reiner, is currently being held in connection with a serious criminal case involving an incident at his family's residence. Authorities have released limited official details, and all information discussed here is based on publicly available reporting. What has drawn widespread attention is not only the charges themselves, but Nick Reiner's reported explanation for why he believes he is incarcerated. According to multiple sources, Reiner does not fully accept that his actions as alleged justify his confinement. Instead, he reportedly believes that outside influences, including people he associates with conspiracy-driven thinking, have shaped how the events were interpreted and how blame was assigned. This belief, according to reports, is not being dismissed as irrelevant. In fact, it may be central to what happens next, because behind the scenes, a major legal shift has already taken place. Nick Reiner's original defense attorney, Alan Jackson, unexpectedly withdrew from the case shortly before a scheduled court appearance. No official explanation was provided publicly, and neither side has elaborated on the exact reasoning. However, in complex criminal cases, especially those involving mental health questions, a change in legal representation often signals a deeper strategic change. According to outlets like TMZ, Reiner's new legal team is now preparing to explore a not guilty by reason of insanity defense. This type of plea is widely misunderstood. It does not claim that an incident did not occur. It does not automatically deny responsibility. Instead, it shifts the court's focus to one specific question. Did the accused, at the time of the incident, have the mental capacity to understand the nature and consequences of their actions? Legally, this is often described as whether someone understood the character and quality of what they were doing. That distinction is critical, because even if actions appear deliberate, the law allows juries to consider whether the individual's perception of reality was significantly impaired at the time. According to sources familiar with the case, Reiner's reported beliefs, including the idea that larger forces orchestrated his situation, are being evaluated as potential indicators of impaired judgment or distorted perception. There is no public evidence supporting those beliefs. But in an insanity-based defense, the belief itself can matter. And that leads to another important factor now under scrutiny. Several reports suggest that Reiner experienced changes to his prescribed medication prior to the incident. According to insiders cited in media coverage, those changes may have coincided with a noticeable decline in his mental stability. No official medical findings have been released. No medication has been publicly identified as a direct cause. But treatment history often plays a significant role in cases where mental health becomes part of a legal argument, because medication adjustments, especially involving psychiatric care, can sometimes affect perception, impulse control, or emotional regulation depending on the individual. Whether that applies here is something only evaluations and court proceedings can determine, but it highlights why this case extends beyond headlines. It raises a broader question. How does the justice system balance accountability with mental health realities? And that question doesn't have an easy answer. To understand where this case could go, it helps to understand how insanity defenses actually function in practice. Despite how often they're referenced in popular culture, pleas of not guilty by reason of insanity are relatively rare and even more rarely successful. According to legal experts, juries are typically cautious, and courts apply strict standards before accepting such claims. In most jurisdictions, the defense must demonstrate that the accused was unable to understand the nature of their actions or distinguish right from wrong at the time of the incident. This isn't about personality traits or past diagnoses alone. It's about mental state during a very specific window of time. And that's why evaluators look beyond the event itself. They examine behavior before and after. They review communications, treatment records, and witness accounts. They assess whether the accused's version of reality was consistent or fragmented. According to reports, this is where Nick Reiner's case becomes particularly complex. Sources cited in media coverage claim that in the weeks leading up to the incident, Reiner's mental health may have been deteriorating. Insiders have alleged that changes to his prescribed medication coincided with increased instability, difficulty processing information, and detachment from reality. These claims have not been independently verified, and no medical professional involved has made public statements. However, such allegations are often examined closely when courts evaluate mental competency. In some cases, medication changes require long adjustment periods. For certain individuals, that transition can temporarily worsen symptoms rather than improve them. Again, this is not a conclusion. It's a factor the court may consider. And it raises a difficult question for jurors. If a person's perception of reality was significantly impaired, where does responsibility begin and end? That question becomes even more complicated when family dynamics enter the picture. Because around the same time the legal strategy appeared to shift, another significant development occurred. Nick Reiner's high-profile defense attorney, Alan Jackson, stepped away from the case. While no official reason was disclosed, multiple insiders later suggested that the decision may not have been purely legal. According to sources speaking to entertainment and news outlets, Reiner's family reportedly decided to fully separate themselves from him, financially and otherwise. These claims suggest that the family chose to stop funding his defense and disengage from decision-making related to his case. If true, that would explain why a public defender was appointed shortly thereafter. It's important to stress that these are second-hand reports. No public statement has been issued by the family confirming these details. But insiders quoted in coverage described the situation as emotionally overwhelming and unsustainable. According to one source, the family reached a point where continued involvement no longer felt constructive, especially given Reiner's reported lack of cooperation and erratic behavior. Whether or not that assessment is fair is not for the public to decide. But it does add another layer to an already complicated case. Because while families often play a supporting role in criminal proceedings, they can also become emotionally exhausted, particularly when mental illness, grief, and legal consequences collide. And that brings us to another unexpected aspect. Despite the seriousness of the charges, sources close to the family have suggested that they do not support the harshest possible punishment. According to insiders, relatives reportedly acknowledge Reiner's mental health, struggles, and believe that extreme sentencing would not provide closure or resolution. Instead, they are said to favor accountability paired with long-term psychiatric treatment. Again, these are reported perspectives, not official positions. But if accurate, they reflect a viewpoint that prioritizes understanding over retribution, a stance that is becoming more visible in discussions around mental health and criminal justice. Meanwhile, prosecutors have indicated that if the most severe penalties are not pursued or imposed, alternative outcomes, including long-term incarceration, remain possible under the law, which means the case is far from resolved. And for observers, The most striking moments may not come from legal arguments, but from what happens in the courtroom itself. When Nick Reiner appeared in court in early January, observers say the atmosphere shifted. According to reporters present, he appeared visibly emotional during the proceedings. Sources described him as subdued and overwhelmed, reacting quietly as the legal process moved forward. These observations are based on eyewitness accounts and media descriptions, not official court findings. In high-profile cases, courtroom behavior often draws intense scrutiny. But legal experts caution against reading too much into emotional displays alone. Appearing distressed does not confirm guilt. Appearing calm does not indicate detachment. Judges and juries are trained to focus on evidence, testimony, and expert evaluations, not outward emotion. Still, such moments matter in a different way. They remind everyone involved that behind legal terminology and procedural steps, there is a human being navigating a life-altering situation. According to court observers, Reiner appeared without restraints typically associated with elevated risk classifications, suggesting that earlier concerns about his immediate safety had been reassessed. Officials have not publicly commented on those internal determinations. He was later escorted out following procedural decisions, and the court scheduled a future hearing date to allow both sides time to prepare. From a legal standpoint, this pause is significant. It gives prosecutors time to strengthen their case. It gives defense attorneys time to gather evaluations, records, and expert testimony. And it allows the court to determine whether Reiner is mentally competent to participate in his own defense. That last point is crucial. Before any trial can proceed, the court must be satisfied that the accused understands the charges and can meaningfully assist counsel. If competency is questioned, separate evaluations may take place. This process can take months. And during that time, public speculation often fills the gaps left by limited official information. Which brings us back to the core issue driving interest in this case. What is actually going on in the mind of Rob Reiner's son? According to reported statements, attributed to sources close to the situation, Reiner's belief system, including the idea that larger forces engineered his circumstances, may not be strategic in nature. Instead, they may reflect genuine distortions in perception. If psychiatric professionals determine that these beliefs are symptoms rather than arguments, that distinction could shape how the case unfolds, because the legal system does not punish beliefs. It evaluates responsibility, and responsibility in cases involving mental health is rarely a binary question. It exists on a spectrum, influenced by medical history, treatment decisions, support systems, and timing. That complexity makes this case difficult to reduce to headlines. It also explains why reactions have been so divided. Some observers focus on accountability and public safety. Others focus on treatment, prevention, and systemic gaps in mental health care. Both perspectives exist simultaneously, and neither fully resolves the tension. As the next hearing approaches, several questions remain unanswered. Will the insanity defense move forward? Will psychiatric evaluations support it? And how will the court balance compassion with responsibility? Those answers won't come all at once. They will emerge slowly through filings, testimony, and rulings, often far from public view. This case is not just about one family or one courtroom. It's about how society responds when mental health, accountability, and tragedy intersect, especially under public scrutiny. In the next video, we'll take a closer look at how courts evaluate psychiatric evidence, why most insanity defenses fail, and what standards juries are actually instructed to follow. That deeper context may help explain not just what could happen here, but why.